Welcome, everyone. It's a Wrap with Rap. I am your host, Ron Rappaport. Before we start, I would like to thank all our listeners, sponsors, and supporters that have helped to make this podcast so successful. The podcast is being heard in all 50 states, all provinces of Canada, and over 45 countries around the world. The podcast has just been ranked by FeedSpot as one of the top 35 overcoming adversity podcasts from thousands of podcasts on the web, and is ranked by traffic, social media followers, domain authority, and content freshness. This podcast features people who have overcome life's challenges and adversities, people who can inspire, motivate, and educate us on an assortment of topics. My guest today is Patrick Moffett. Pat is an internationally acclaimed author and producer. Pat served as Vice President of Global Logistics and Customs Compliance at Vox International Corporation from 1980 to 2017. He began his career in the bill of lading department for an ocean cargo carrier at just 17 years old. After serving in the United States Army for 2 years, including 14 months in Vietnam, Pat re-entered the business world and held high positions in the international trade world. Pat is the author of the critically acclaimed book, Fortunate Soldier, about his service during the Vietnam War, one of the few comedies ever written about the conflict. Pat's second book, Ice Cream in the Cupboard, is about his family's struggle with early onset Alzheimer's disease. This book has also been translated into Spanish and Chinese. In 2019, Pat brought his book to life with the award-winning film Ice Cream in the Cupboard, which can be viewed on Amazon and many other platforms. Pat has received numerous awards for his work for raising awareness and providing support for the caregivers and loved ones of early onset Alzheimer's victims. Pat is here with us today to do what he is passionate about, raise awareness and provide support for caregivers and individuals diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's disease. Welcome, Pat, to the podcast. We're so glad you can be with us. And also, I want to thank you for your service to our great country.
Thank you, Ron. Good to be here with you.
Great to have you. Really looking forward to discussing the subject with you. Tell us about your wife, Carmen, before she contracted early onset Alzheimer's, and what your life was like before Alzheimer's started in 1998.
Well, life was fairly normal. We, young couple working hard. She was working in the school system. Of course, I was in logistics, as you just mentioned. We had a couple of bumps in the road in our earlier days. In the 1980s, we separated for a few years and then wound up going back together and got the kids raised. And life was just, tapping on. We were having just a great marriage again. And things were wonderful until 1998.
Oh, 1998.
Yeah.
Pat, tell us what age group is affected and how many people are affected with this early onset Alzheimer's in the United States.
Yeah, my focus is to work with caregivers and so on is the early onset category. And that group is 65 years old and younger. So, but you'll see people 67, 68 that get this. It's still a young sort of case, but the majority, where they count the numbers, are 65 and under. Right now, we have it's usually about 3 to 5% of the total Alzheimer's population. So in the United States, we have 5 million Alzheimer's cases. So the range would be about 250,000 or so early onset, which is a fairly big number.
Yeah, when I was researching it, I even got figures ranging from 220 to 640,000. So, yeah. So can you tell our audience the symptoms we need to be aware of early onset Alzheimer's?
Well, we come to some of the basic ones that affects all levels of having this disease. What's such thing as memory loss, difficult adding and subtracting, not be able to do daily functions, personal hygiene starts to be compromised. You kind of withdraw from work and being in mixed company, confusion, and really one of the big ones was with early onset is not only aggressive but violent behavior, and that's a big one.
Now, since early onset Alzheimer's cannot be prevented, what can we do to reduce the risk?
Well, I always say that, the have a good diet, exercise regularly. And these are more or less things that would be involved in other diseases as well. But the big one that I point to is being mentally active. And by that I mean Sudoku, crossword, just reading, word find. I tell people that are getting older that don't sit in front of the TV and watch quiz shows and soap operas all day. That's not good. You're opening up the door for dementia when you do that. So you need to stay active.
Right, right. And those word games help a lot, I'm sure. I see I see a lot of older people playing
Yeah, especially if they have today's Sudoku, and that really tells you.
Yeah. Now, how is early onset Alzheimer's diagnosed? How do they diagnose it?
Well, right now they have PET scans, which is one way. They have another thing called the cerebral spinal fluid, which is kind of an invasive sort of test. There is blood tests that they can take, but it seems that most of the medical community really relies on the cognitive testing. And by that I mean we take 3 words. Let's take table, car, and wall.
Okay.
And they'll say that to this possible person being tested, and say, okay, I'm going to come back to them, but remember those 3 words. And the person that's testing will talk about the weather for a minute or two and say, what were those 3 words again? And the patient with dementia or Alzheimer's has a struggle with it, can't remember them. Maybe one of them or 2 of them, but never remembers all of them.
Right.
So that's always a big concern.
So a lot of
there are tests like that. That's the cognitive approach.
Any blood tests that they have?
Yeah, there is a blood test. Yeah, blood test can be done. It's called a PTAU 217 is the one that can be tested. And I won't get into any of the technical stuff with it, but it's another way for being diagnosed.
So before Carmen, your wife, had shown signs of early onset Alzheimer's, Pat, did you even know anything about it? Did you even know it existed? Was it on the radar at all, or not really?
Well, I knew it existed, but of course, so much of America, right to this day, and that will hear this broadcast at some point, will be shocked to hear that, what? Under 65? So when all this started to come around, I went, yeah, you get at 80 or 90, so I got nothing to worry about right now.
Right.
When Carmen was diagnosed, she was 53 and I was 49. So you're not thinking this at all. It is not even close to you thinking that, oh, it might be Alzheimer's. It's just not a consideration.
Right. So really wasn't really on the radar at all.
Yeah. I run in a hurry.
What was the first extreme sign that alerted you to something was off with your wife's behavior?
Well, we had a Saturday afternoon. We were just sitting home, and I was watching the ball game, and she was sitting out on the deck with my stepdaughter, and they were having a glass of wine. It was a nice summer day. And suddenly she just burst into the room, had a glass of wine in her hand, threw the wine in my face, and said, you paid for my girlfriend's funeral. I can't believe you did this. Why'd you do? Just yelling. And my stepdaughter's looking at me like, I didn't know. I don't know. She just stood up and ran.
Right.
So this is crazy behavior.
What's going on? Yeah.
And of course, she was referring to a girlfriend of hers that I had dated way back in the 80s when we were separated. And that was old news. And how this snapped like that. And a couple of social workers that I began early with Alzheimer's said, early onset it's a light switch. It just goes, and you have to be ready for it when it does. And that's so true. So we dealt with that, and of course, 10 minutes later, right, she didn't speak or do anything, and within an hour, she seemed like nothing had happened. So I said, okay, it's a little weird, but maybe she just had a bad scene going on. Maybe there's the wine. I don't know.
So, or maybe a bad night. Maybe she was waking up from a bad nightmare or something, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Who knows? So did you contact Carmen's doctor to see if there was any underlying health issues when all this was going on?
Yeah, I thought, I said, that this, of course, again, I'm still on the level of not even considering Alzheimer's, so I'm just looking everywhere else. So I contacted the local internist, and I said, "Oh, what do you think about this behavior?" And he said, "Well, sometimes, you know, vitamin B6, deficiency of vitamin B6, vitamin B12, so, okay, so I got the vitamins, bought vitamin B12, B6, and then I went to her obstetrician and I said, what do you think this is menstrual? Is this something that changes in life? And he said, no, she's too young for that. I don't think. He said, although those things, because, menopause does come with some aggressive behavior in all women that get to that
Yeah.
stage in life. And he said that, no, he said, I've had her exam all going. She seemed fine. I don't think it's in that direction at all. So then I was totally lost because I couldn't find anything else.
Right, right. So I think the gist of that is if you can't find answers, just keep looking, right? Keep
Right,
asking.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Is there any history of Alzheimer's in the family?
Well, when I got started to write Ice Cream in the Cupboard and came up with the whole idea to frame it out, well, there was nobody in the family that remembered much about Carmen's parents. I knew her mother had died of breast cancer. Carmen was about 15. I remember her telling me that. She was very lucid before she died. And but no one seemed to know much about the father, except for the fact that he was an alcoholic and he died in a nursing home. So I got a hold of one of the aunts in the family down in North Carolina. She had been raised down in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. So the 82nd Airborne Division brat. And I got a hold of one of the aunts and I said, was there any, Emilio was her father's name. I said, was there anything odd about him at all? So I said, she says, well, he drank all the time. He was always drunk. I said, but how about his behavior? He worked. He was a garment cutter on the old 37th Street in Manhattan in the garment district. And she said, well, there was something there. She said, he went out to lunch several times and couldn't find his way back to work. She said, I come to think of it, there was a couple of times he left the building, he couldn't find his way home on a subway. He rode the subway for 4 or 5 hours until somebody found him. So everyone looked at it was just alcohol that was doing this. It wasn't the alcohol. It could have been a good mixture of that, but
Yeah.
certainly this had Alzheimer's connected to it.
Kat, tell us how you found out about her actual diagnosis. When was she actually diagnosed with this?
Well, there was some things that were going on, in the house, some of the forgetfulness and the behavior, and it was really bad. And she came home one day and she said, can I sit down? I want to talk to you. And I said, sure. And I sat down and she said, I have a touch of Alzheimer's. I said, a touch. I said, isn't that kind of like being a little bit pregnant?
Yeah.
She said, no, I have full-blown Alzheimer's, I was told today. And so I had come to find out that she was in the school system where she was working. It was an elementary school. And everything that Carmen was doing at the time, she was so good at it. She was a budget administrator and completely forgot to do the school budget. When they asked her for it, she went, I don't do that. And then she was taking care of the bus passes for the kids at school, gave the wrong buses to the wrong groups. Kids were going this way and that way. And a couple of times the parent would go and say, listen, don't put my daughter on the bus today. I'm coming to pick her up. We're going shopping. And they were talking to Carmen. She hung up the phone. That call no longer existed. So the child, of course, would get there on the bus at home and there was nobody home, sit on the steps. They look up for neighbors. They call the police. And this happened a couple of times. So it all zeroed back to Carmen's phone in the elementary school. And that was it. So they told Carmen at the school, listen, you need to go up to Notre Hospital. We have a doctor up there. You need to take a look and go for an exam with them. If there's something wrong with you, okay, we'll know about it then. We can deal with it. And if you have to go on disability or anything, at least you have that. But if you refuse to take the exam, we have to let you go for cause.
Right.
There's no other explanation. Well, she went up there that day and with the cognitive test right away, it wasn't even close. So I wasn't even involved with anything, and I just heard from her that evening.
Wow. Yeah, that must have been quite a shock.
Oh,
Yeah,
just stunned. It's,
yeah.
and all that's, started to ring back into my head again of all the places I was tracking around trying to figure out what could this be. It all came down to that
Yeah.
final answer.
Yeah, it all fell into place. So can
Yes.
you explain to us the changes that you as a caregiver or all caregivers of early onset Alzheimer's or Alzheimer's that you have to
Well,
make to accommodate the patient remaining calm and steady? What kind of changes do you have to go through?
well, you really have to be able to take care of all of the family business. What documents do you have? Where are things located? And in trying to keep the patient on a good solid level, and not everything is where you have to don't quit your job and stay home. She was good for quite a while being by herself. There was nothing too drastic. She never left the house, or if she walked the dog, she knew how to come back to the house, and all was fine. So it's not until you reach that stage where you started to see some bad things going on that you really have to consider all these things and see what best to do with her, and especially if you can get a caregiver to work with you. Don't take it on yourself. Get the family involved, create a team. That's what you have to do, and then to work with her.
How many years was she pretty good where you didn't have to worry about all that?
Unfortunately, only about 2,
Wow.
because it had reached a point that the violent behavior got so bad. The Alzheimer's daycare center called me up and they said she was only there about 2 months. And they said, Mr. Moffett, your wife has to be removed. And I said, what happened? I thought we were okay. She said, well, she punched out a 90-year-old man today and he got hurt bad.
Wow.
And the family's on the way down. And you need to come too. With a superior event. In the state of New York, both the center and the family of the one that created this violent behavior are subject to lawsuit. But the family was good. The old man was okay. But she punched him pretty bad. His face was pretty messed up. And this is they said, that's it. We're done. There's
Yeah.
nothing more we can do. We're risking so much here. So I just had a discussion with the doctors, and they said the only thing you do at this stage is that, first of all, you're wearing down. Your blood pressure is skyrocketing. Your blood count is awful. You've lost a ton of weight, and that's why you're pouring too much into this. And especially in the spouse, or every husband or wife thinks, listen, this is my wife, this is my husband. No one can take care of them better than me.
Right.
And you're very adamant about it. And then some people will try to help you when you push them away. So they said the only thing you can do now, you have to send her for psychotic drug testing, antipsychotic drug testing, at this special hospital we have on Long Island. So I said, well, what do we hope this is going to result in? Well, first of all, we got to get her calm. Everything else isn't working. And once we get her calm, hopefully we want to find out what cocktail mixture of these drugs will work. I think there were 28 of them, will work to calm and put her in a calm state. And, you take her home, and then we move on to the next step. I said, okay, fine. And they said, what you need to do is take a little vacation. Don't take a guilt trip, but take a regular trip. You need to get away, spend a little time with the family, whatever. Take a breather for these 3 weeks. And after 3 weeks were up, they called me in, and I met with 2 psychiatrists, a couple of social workers, and they said, Mr. Moffett, this is one of the worst cases we've ever seen.
Wow.
Because the antipsychotic drugs that we're giving her are very high potent. And we have to recommend strongly, it's your decision, but we have to recommend strongly that you do not take her home, that she move into 24/7 care immediately. She's a danger to herself, anybody she comes near, and she's certainly a danger to you. So that was sort of the decision was made for me.
Yeah.
Being a danger, I'm one thing, but being a danger to herself, the children, burning the house down. I mean, there's so much that goes on. You and I could talk about some of these incidents all night.
Yeah.
But that was the decision. That's why I had to do it. So it was just 2 years because the disease accelerated so quickly.
Yeah.
And the drugs that they were giving her that slow it down, which are still used today, really had little effect. So that's where we start. And the nursing home will not take you unless you prove that these psychotic drugs are coming with you, and they can administer them.
Yeah, because they don't want the liability either.
Yeah, I mean, it's the
Yeah.
same thing. And, it's a very lonely feeling, Ron.
Yeah.
It seems like nobody wants you, you worked hard all your life, and this is where we are.
Yeah. Yeah. It's terrible. Can you explain to our audience what is and what's the effect sundowning plays in your daily routine? This is where the sun goes down. It's getting kind of late in the afternoon, early evening.
Yeah, and that's exactly the time frame you pick. And it seems that the biological clock in the Alzheimer's and dementia changes when that time of day rolls in. I mean, I've listened to a couple of speeches on this, and one of the things that when I was an executive, I'm not the nicest guy in the world about 6, 7 o'clock either. I'm pretty worn down and I'm a little cranky. And so does, an Alzheimer's patient. That's not their best time of day. So the caregiver really has to concentrating on distraction. That's what to do with that. Take a look at some old pictures, look at some old albums, go for a walk together. Take the dog out, but do things together. Don't leave the patient or the loved one, sitting in a room by herself. Try to keep them busy. And then, then the day time may have been quite active. And during the day is quite active. They're worse when you're sundown. So try to slow the day down and break it up a little bit. Don't run them into the ground doing things. Try to space their activities.
Right.
They'll sleep better, and the sundowning is a little lighter.
Can you tell us some stories, Pat, about the violent behavior seen with this disease, especially in the older people? Can you tell us some stories about that? Give our audience an idea.
I'd like to give you this Puerto Rico story if that's okay with you.
Sure, go ahead.
That was with us. And this is horrifying, and I hate to see anybody go through anything close to this. As we were doing all this bickering and that before we had any kind of diagnosis, when she got worse, I said, Carmen was from Puerto Rico, born there, and I said, maybe we ought to get away. Let's go for a long weekend together, relax. We'll go to Puerto Rico, do a little shopping, we'll just play loose and unwind. Maybe that's why we're doing this bickering back and forth. And I mean, every husband and wife can bicker, but this was way out of sort.
Yeah.
And so we got down there, and we went to a restaurant called the Chart House, one of my favorite restaurants from years ago. And we were sitting there on the table, ordered steak and lobster, and I was looking over the side of the railing of the restaurant. It was on a kind of a veranda on the second floor. And I said, well, look at these cars. 58 Ford, 52 Chevy, 61 Pontiac. Because of the temperature down here, these cars just last forever in Puerto Rico. And I turned my head back, and I was hit in the face with a whole plate of steak and lobster.
Wow.
Just bashed. No reason, no argument, no nothing. No alcohol. I flipped out of the chair and went backwards and hit my head on the table behind me. And she ran out of the restaurant. I was covered with all kinds of stuff on my shirt. I was wearing a yellow cotton shirt. And so they picked me up off the floor. And I'm looking around totally dazed. She's gone. And I said to the maitre d', I said, please, let me pay. He said, no, senor, that's okay. We have it. Just maybe take care of your wife. So I went running after her down the main drag of Puerto Rico, which is called Ashford Street. And I could see her, and she was moving fast, and I was running. And now you have a 6'3" Irish guy chasing a 5'tall Puerto Rican woman down the middle of San Juan. This is not a good thing.
No.
This doesn't look good at all. Who's in the wrong here?
Yeah.
So the police saw me, and they came up and caught up to me and her at the same time. And I said, Senor, what's going on? What are you running through the streets? I said, my wife and I had a little argument. Well, we never had an argument. I was just looking for things to say that might make sense to somebody.
Yeah.
And she says, "We have no argument. I hate you." And she just hit me again in the face.
Oh my God.
So I said, "Okay." We slowed the whole thing down. We wound it down. I got her in a cab. The cops were okay by that. I said, "We're going right back to the Hilton Hotel." And we got back to the room. She laid on the bed and went right to sleep. I was shaking, Ron. I went out on the terrace. There was a mini bar, and there were 4 cans of beer in the mini bar.
Time to hit the mini. That's time to hit the mini bar.
Yeah, I took all 4 cans out on the terrace, drank the 4 cans, and I just trying to make some sense of what just happened to me. And I started to calm down a little bit. I figured let me just wait till she gets up. Well, about 30 minutes later, Carmen wakes up and walks out. She says, "Honey, I am starved. What are we going to eat?"
Oh, wow.
I said, I tried that and you threw your food at me. She says, "You know, Patrick, you like to joke around a lot. That's not a joke. I would never do anything like that. And why did you get all this crap on your shirt anyway? You look terrible." There's absolutely no recollection of this major event with police throwing stuff, the whole thing. I got American Airlines on the phone. I kept the first flight out in the morning. And I got her a hamburger. She went to sleep and nothing happened. When we got back home, she was a little more calm, but that's when everything started to happen at the school, which I just mentioned to you before. But that was one horrible experience. I went back and told the kids, Mom threw a plate at me in a restaurant. And you weren't fighting and you didn't say anything? No, I didn't. You're okay, Dad. You were fighting, So just no one believed what I was saying.
Yeah.
It was a horrible event.
It has to be, I would imagine, as you keep getting into this more and more, you're walking on eggshells, so to speak.
Yes, sure. Oh, sure.
And that's gotta be awfully stressful for a caretaker.
Oh, yeah.
Just, I mean, you never know. You never know from minute to minute.
Yeah, as we've had that, you're back to the old light switch thing.
Yeah. Now, your wife's 2 sisters and brother passed away from early onset Alzheimer. I assume heredity. Are there any today? Are there any genetic tests for this?
There is a genetic test. It's the gene for Alzheimer's is APOE4 gene, and so there is a test for that to be tested for that gene. But one of my stepdaughters is a doctor, and she's a twin. They're twin girls, and they said to me, "Dad, okay, so you go get the test. What do you do then? We're at a stage where life is. You're not going to change anything. They can't do anything with the test except, yeah, you got it, and you're probably going to get Alzheimer's, or you may get Alzheimer's, but
Right.
You could get it at 90 as well." And now the girls have passed 55 years old, and they don't have anything. So it's kind of a weird thing. So they do have that test, but what do you do with it? They're working on things where if you get tested maybe at 30 or so, and you find out you have it, that they may have medications at that point in time. But that's still down the road right now.
That's down the road. Okay. What are some of the life lessons as an Alzheimer caretaker that you've learned?
The real major one, Ron, I have to tell you, I was so more appreciative to life watching Carmen and my wife just rot away from this disease. And that I promised myself I was going to make every day count more than I ever did before. And I said that after Vietnam too. If I get home, I'm going to make sure I'm going to take every day. It's going to be very special.
Right.
And then I kind of drifted off, and you go about your business. This time, I really meant it. So it's learning the importance of life and how fragile every breath that you take really is. That's what I learned.
What are some of the most important things an Alzheimer caretaker must always be aware of on a continual basis with an Alzheimer patient? What do you have to concentrate on every day?
Well, you're referring from the caregiver point of view.
Yeah.
Well, they have to get them into routines. Okay, they have to be careful not to try to keep them away from mirrors. Because they tend to look at it, and that's when they have the agnosia. where they don't know who they're looking at.
Oh, right, right.
Yeah, and that can absolutely turn violent. As a caregiver myself, dealing just with that, I had Carmen, we were on a two-story house, and Carmen was upstairs for a while. And I said, well, 15 minutes, she's upstairs, something could be wrong. And I ran upstairs because I didn't cover the mirror, and she used a magic marker on her face and said, honey, how do you like my makeup? This looks good. Oh, there's so
Wow.
many things you have to watch out for, you know. And then when the violent behavior picked up, of course, forks, knives, anything that could do any kind of damage to you.
Yeah.
And because there was a scene that's it's actually in the movie as well, and I wrote about it, regarding a knife. I woke up in the middle of the night and I saw her get up. It was dark. I saw her get into the dresser, opened up the dresser, pulled out something. She had a pajamas or whatever and wrapped the pajamas around it and went back to bed. So she went back to sleep and I went in and I found a knife that I had from Vietnam she had in the drawer. Now, what was she going to do with it? Was that going into my chest next? You know, that's when you know I got to get everything away from her.
Yeah.
So she can't hurt me or anybody else for that.
What about
Yep.
what about her taking off, just leaving the home and with no supervision?
Oh yeah, that's one of the biggest things that the caregivers have to deal with today with the early onset. And let me give you a couple of examples for this when we talk about a caregiver. When you select a caregiver, it should be with a licensed firm where people are trained to deal with the early onset version of Alzheimer's,
Right.
or Alzheimer's in general, if you're more comfortable with that. Now, I happen to hire a caregiver who came well recommended, that she knew work with Alzheimer's patients, and the loved one has to stay home with the wife or husband while the caregiver is blending in with the patient. This won't go like you throw her on her, and you say, "Okay, here you go, I'm out of here," because they're going to attack that caregiver. But if you blend slowly into it, it works better. So I saw this woman, and she knew what to do. She was playing games. She had Carmen distracted. And I was much more comfortable. But one day, when I didn't look at this person, it was a woman that was not in the greatest physical condition. She was somewhat overweight, and she went to use the bathroom, and didn't take Carmen with her. She thought it'd be fine. Carmen was out the door, so she came down and found out she was gone. I came home as I was driving my car down the block from work. I could have sworn I saw my wife with a construction helmet on. And I stopped the car and I said, I got out, and the construction guy said, "You know her?" And I said, "Yeah, it's my wife. I'm sorry." He says, "Oh my God, we were going to call the police. We didn't know what to do with her. She was going to jump in the ditch." She said, "I just want to work with you."
Wow.
And so I got, and with that, the caregiver comes running around the corner,
Yeah.
huffing and puffing, and so you make a mistake, that's how you learn.
Yeah.
That's not going to make sure the caregiver's his health is in some physical shape, especially for early onset.
So she had a helmet on, and
yeah, they said, he said, "Can I wear your helmet?" They didn't know what to do because she's dressed beautiful. It's a beautiful woman.
Yeah.
She was dressed beautiful. She was talking nice. They just didn't know what to do. They're just going to call police. Say this woman is lost or something. The case, a very sad case in Pennsylvania last winter. I think it was only one day we had, I know we had 60 inches of snow on the island. I think they had about 20 inches of snow in Pennsylvania. And Altoona, I think it was. And what happened was a husband and wife woman had early onset for 3 or 4 years. She was at the age of 67. And she got up in the middle of the night and walked out the door in her pajamas and just kept going. Husband thought she was going to the bathroom, went back to sleep. She went out the front door in the snowstorm. She got 4 blocks from her house, became totally disoriented. The snow was falling so heavy. She just crawled into a snowbank and stayed there. And he realized, oh my God, she wasn't going to the bathroom. She got out. So he didn't take precautions to put an alarm on the door, to do the things you have to do to learn these things. That's why you
Yeah.
have to study up when it happens. And she died in the snowbank
Oh
of
my God.
hypothermia. Died of hypothermia when she had early onset over one simple thing. There's that light switch again, Ron. She got up out of bed. You thought that X was going to happen instead of Y happened. Very sad.
I mean, I know this was a while back, but did anybody tell you about this kind of thing to look out for? Like maybe you might want to, take the bleach and put it up, where they can't find it, or whatever, or lock the door at night. I mean, were you alerted? Do they
the
alert
social
you to this?
workers that I was with on the island?
Yeah.
Yes, they were very good that way. Telling me keep an eye on this, keep an eye on this, and they would always check in on the phone, make sure I was okay with these things. But sometimes out in the country and places like that, they don't do that. They don't get recommended.
Right.
They don't get any recommendations, and that's sad because that was a simple matter. That woman's life could have been saved.
Oh,
Maybe
absolutely.
just a simple foot alarm on the door.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but
Pat,
you do need that guidance, and that's one of the reasons that I do the things with you right now.
yeah.
Someone will learn something from this.
Exactly. Exactly. And there's people going to be listening to this all over the world, and who don't even know.
An elderly case up in the Bronx last year. There was two guys. They were friends. One was 87, one was 88. The 87-year-old had Alzheimer's. The 88-year-old did not. In the middle of the night, the 87-year-old went down to his friend's room. They weren't in the same room. Banged his head on the floor and killed him. Went back to his room and went back to bed. So they found the other guy on the floor in the morning, and until they checked the cameras, nobody heard this guy even moving. They saw him go down there and come back.
Wow.
And he had Alzheimer's.
Wow.
Woman up in Massachusetts. One more. I'll give you one more.
Okay.
Woman, 100, and the roommate's 99 years old. The 99 years old does not have Alzheimer's. The 100-year-old does. So the 99-year-old woman's son comes in and says, listen, this woman keeps threatening me every day. I don't want to be here. Can't you get me out of this room? He says, well, she hasn't done anything. I think you just guys are rambling and talking like two little old ladies, She said, no, this woman, you don't know what she says to me during the day when you're not here and there's nobody around. She's constantly threatening me. Well, 2 months later, they found the 90-year-old woman dead on the floor. Right, and a plastic bag from a waste paper basket, right, was put around her neck and just closed it. Then the 100-year-old woman had killed the 99-year-old.
Oh my God.
With the plastic bag.
Wow.
And the son had to live with that decision by not moving. So, and those are elderly cases. Now, are they every week, Ron? Absolutely not. But there's a lot more out there than whatever gets reported.
Yeah, but who knows? We probably don't get all the stories, obviously.
Oh, no.
A lot of it's, just swept under the rug.
If they can check a box that says, dementia involved, okay, next phone call.
Yeah.
But who's going to carry that message forward? So maybe we get a chance to save somebody along the way.
Absolutely. Or at least alert people to what's going on. Pat, what prompted you to write Ice Cream in the Cupboard? Make yourself vulnerable out there, put yourself out there, and how long did it take you to write the book?
It took just about 5 months, and it was so much more fresh in my mind because everything had just happened. And when the real inspiration, of course, was Carmen's. I didn't plan to write a book, but when Carmen's two sisters and her brother said, "What is this? How can this 4 out of 4 siblings, all in their 50s, died in their 60s?" It's just mind-boggling for me. And people that'll hear this on your show will say, "I haven't even heard of that." And they're not, again, they're not every day, they're not every month, but they're out there. And don't forget all the things that we deal with on these percentages that we talked about before. They're really worldwide. Usually 4% of any population of Alzheimer's in any country is going to be under 65. But those stats are never kept anyway.
Yeah. But when it affects you, then that's just now 1%. That's 1,000%.
Yeah, then that's right.
Now the book Ice Cream in the Cupboard has been translated into Spanish and Chinese. Tell us how that project is going.
Well, the Spanish book, basically, I've been sending them down to the Alzheimer's centers in South America and Central America, where they have very difficult facilities if anything, to take care of the patients. Nothing like what we have here. So that's doing well as far as that goes. That's more or less a donating thing on my part. But the Chinese version, which I did had it done in traditional and simple Chinese, I've not been able to find a publisher for that. So that's still a struggle ongoing.
Any idea how many? I think the stats are the same. That many people in China, probably a lot. There's a lot of Alzheimer's.
It's got to be overwhelming number.
Yeah.
And don't forget the Chinese for years have been saying, listen, I don't know what you guys in America are doing with this Alzheimer's. This is just part of aging. What's all this big project you guys are working on here?
Yeah.
They only had one treatment set in Beijing and one in Shanghai. They've got to have hundreds of thousands of cases.
Oh my God. Yeah.
But one of the things that was done in that case, Ron, I talked to a doctor. I was going back and forth to China all the time in the logistics part of my job. And I met a doctor one time when we were talking, and he said, the Chinese, they don't, this is a stigma. If someone finds out that you have Alzheimer's or this dementia behavior, there won't be a wedding if it's a bride and groom and the groom's got dementia in his family, no wedding. Business deals, no business deal if they find out they have dementia on one side. And if they're in the house and the caregiver's got to go out and it's a bond, they just tie them to a chair. So that's again, now it's improving. They're addressing this now. I think they're getting back into medications, so hopefully that'll come along.
That's good. You wrote
the name ice cream in the cupboard when I got back from that trip to Puerto Rico. I said, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? No one believes me. And we went food shopping, and I left Carmen with the food to put it away. And I went to the dry cleaners, and I came back and I noticed the pantry, which she called the cupboard from coming up in North Carolina. I said, some of this white liquid coming
yeah.
coming the bottom. And I opened up and I followed the shelves up. And I opened up, pushed canned goods, and there was a deflated box of Breyer's vanilla ice cream. And I said, I have to get this woman to a doctor somehow, because she said, there's something wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with me. These things you told me I did, I never did.
Yeah.
Why are you making these things up? Why are you doing this? So that was kind of the core or the pivotal point. So I had to name it Ice Cream in the Cupboard.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Now, you wrote the book Fortunate Soldier. Tell us about that book. And I understand it may become a screenplay.
Yes, I'm going to be signing a contract probably tomorrow or Friday with a screenplay writer. His name is Liam Malloy. Him and I met when I was filming Ice Cream in the Cupboard. And he said, I read this book, and he's only in his 40s. He knows very little about the Vietnam War. And he said, I absolutely love this book. I laughed and cried all the way through it. And he said, I'm a screenplay writer, and maybe we can put something together. So I said, okay. And I had my hands full with Ice Cream in the Cupboard. And I said, we'll stay in touch. So he got in touch with me, about 3 or 4 months ago, and we started this routine. And he's a Writers Guild of America. He's a union writer. So I actually had to join the union in order to sign him.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to have a nice little project, but this one I'm not going to produce. The stress was a bit much. So I think we'll get the script, and then we'll see if we can sell it to a production company.
Okay. Pat, did you utilize support groups in your caretaking journey?
Well, I became one of the creators, at least on Long Island, for the early onset, category. When I was the younger man, 49, 50 years old, when Carmen in nursing home, I started to come unglued. I would go into, there's a support group meets over here. So I went over there, and don't forget the time, I was a pretty young guy. I'm in my 70s now. But then I was, much younger guy. And I'd walk in, and everybody in the room was 75, 80. And they looked at me like, I think you have the wrong group.
Yeah, what are you doing here?
Yeah, what are you doing here? This is Alzheimer's, And I said, I tried to explain it to them, and they didn't get it. They just, how everyone felt so sorry for me, but it wasn't a good group to be with. So I decided to start my own.
Yeah. Oh, good. Okay, so you're a believer in that, and I'm a believer in that too. I think those support groups help a lot.
what I tried to do with this, and it's always worked out well out here again. I got 10 or 15 early onset caregivers, and I said, why don't we all have dinner together? Dinner's on me. Order a steak, meet each other. If you like, have a glass of wine, but relax. I want you to relax. And we had their patients, loved ones, professionally watched. They were at the Alzheimer's Center. So now these people could take that breather.
Yeah.
And they just loved it. And they became their own support group with each other with Facebook and Messenger and texting. So they were helping each other. But
they became a
family. What's that?
They became a family.
They became a family. My most moving night of this, I guess it was 15 meetings in, somewhere in a year or so. A woman came in and we go around the table and everybody says what dementia they have and who they're there for, who they're caregiving for. And this woman said, well, I came from Suffolk County, which is about 50 miles from where we were. And she said, but I came here for one reason. I came here to thank Pat Moffett for saving my life. Ron, the tears welled up in my eyes immediately. And she was about 2 feet from me. And I said, I don't know what to say. That's a good thing, I guess, of course. So one of the social workers asked her, how do you think? She said, my husband has this disease at 51 years old. He's had it for 2 years. He's already in bad condition. Nursing home, there's no future. And we have no family. I'm by myself. And this group here is pretty much all I have. No one in the family really cares about me. And I had completely created my suicide. I had it all planned out and laid out. Somebody said, this room, ice cream in the cupboard, you should read it, what this guy did. He went through a bit of a rough time, and I don't think you did, but you might get something out of it. And she says, I read Pat's book, and she said, if he can do this, I can do this.
Wow.
And she said, I pushed my suicide plans aside, and that's why I'm here tonight. I drove the 50 miles to tell you that.
Pat, that had to make you feel awfully good.
Absolutely. If nothing else happened, if I didn't have one other person for the rest of the time, and that was a good 10 years ago, that's it for me. I did what I could do. That's the pinnacle.
Yeah. Getting outside help to watch the patient, for our audience out there, what advice can you lend the audience on that subject? How do they go about that? What do they need to watch for as far as some outside help?
Well, I think I briefly crossed it before. Try to go with a professional group that has people that are trained to deal with that.
Okay.
Not just, well, this woman knows how to watch adults or something. Well, that's not it. Get people that know something about dementia, that have some familiarity with it, good physical condition. And when you do through these other companies, they're insured. So that should be part of the whole situation as well.
Can you describe for us when your wife forgot who you were? What was that like?
Well, my wife, I'm sorry.
The day she forgot who you were.
Oh yeah, that's when we knew we had reached the next plateau of instruction. I was working at Box International, and I came home from work, briefcase, suit and tie, and walked in the door, and I said, honey, I'm home. And she came halfway down the stairs from upstairs, and she said, you better get out of here, because my husband's going to be here, and he's going to kick the hell out of you when he gets here. I said, honey, it's me. It's your husband. It's Pat. No. You're not my husband. So I don't think you're going to sneak into my house. Because when he gets here, and you're wasting your time staying, he's going to kick your ass. So I decided, okay, let me just grab this and walk out the door. Took the briefcase, the coat, and I stood out there about 30 seconds. Just like, first of all, absorbing the fact that I knew this was going to happen someday. And here it is. Now it's happened. I walked back and I said, honey, I'm home. She said, great. Dinner's going to be ready in about 5 minutes. Only 30 seconds went by, and that's what this disease does. I was shattered.
Speak to the phrase, and I think a lot of people have heard this, if the caregiver doesn't take care of himself, Alzheimer Alzheimer's can claim two victims, patient and caregiver.
Yeah, the first meeting with Dr. Giselle Wolfcoin at Northwell Health was the first Dr. Carmen's doctor geriatrician. And we talked about our assessment. I was just trying to absorb all this, on all the things we had to do. And she said, Mr. Moffett, I'm going to leave you with one thing today, and it's the most important. She said, this disease can easily claim two people. And those people are Carmen and you. And she said, the way it gets you is that it drives you to a point that you're working so hard to maintain your wife's safety, your wife's health, doing what you can to make her comfortable in life, because you can't do much more than that. But it runs you down, and your immune system begins to fail, and you start catching all kinds of things. Your heart starts to deteriorate, which happened to me. And of course, it was Dr. Wolfkind herself that said, see, here it is. That's why we have to send your wife with an antipsychotic drug test, because you need to get away from this, either break away a little bit, because this will kill you. And that was it. And I've seen so many people run. When I said to them, listen, you need help. No, I can take care of my wife. Don't tell me I need help. I said, well, if you keep it up at the pace you're doing, you're going to have a heart attack. And in 3 cases, all 3 of these men had heart attacks. Fortunately, they were saved in time. But then they changed their tune and hired professional help. It's a matter of pride, not money.
Yeah. Pat, do you have any new projects coming up on the horizon?
Just the ice cream of the Fortunate Soldier movie. That's the biggest thing. That's another great message. I think that trying to bring some levity to Vietnam is what I need to do. And you can't put 2 million guys through an entire war for 10 years and not have a few funny things happen. And that was pretty much what my tour was, to a great degree. I mean, Dennis Leary, the actor, said that he read Fortune Soldier. He said it's a terrific book, but he said, this is about 10 years ago. He said the American public's not ready for a comedy in Vietnam, and you're not Robin Williams, so it's not going to be Good Morning Vietnam kind of thing. Yeah. So, and that's the biggest thing going. If I can get a few people, Vietnam veterans just love the book. They love it. All veterans love it. So I think I can change the world a little bit and put a smile on people's faces. Again, I've accomplished something.
Absolutely. Pat, what are some of the organizations and resources out there you can recommend for people with dealing with Alzheimer's?
The Alzheimer's Association, I think, is the strongest. It's www.alz.org. In Canada, it's www.alzheimers.ca. And one particular one that has come around, and I was involved with them during the past year. It's called dementiamap.com. This is a very comprehensive site, all kinds of things about caregiving, and I was just very impressed by it. So dementiamap.com is one of my favorites.
Okay, dementiamap.com.
Yeah.
Okay. For those out there facing this disease as caregivers, what lasting advice can you give them? What words of wisdom can you give them?
Well, I have to stay on the fact that you have to take care of your health. Use patience. And I was a guy that had no patience at all. I had to flip my life upside down to try to deal with Carmen. It was a difficult task. So if you're not patient, you better get used to it. That's the big badge of courage that you're going to have. And take care of your own health. Make good decisions. Think about it. And create a team. Try to get your family involved. Let people fill in at certain times so you get that break. Again, it'll help your health if you get someone in to break up the consistent pressure that caregiver gets under. So those are my recommendations.
Okay. How can people contact you, Pat?
You go on patmoffett.com. You can leave a message there. You can go on icecreaminthecupboard.com, or you can go to the Ice Cream in the Cupboard Facebook page. You can leave a message
there. Okay, so the main ones are patmoffett.com
yes,
and Ice Cream in the Cupboard. .com. Pat, I want to thank you for being here and sharing your story. I know what you've been through is unbelievably challenging, to say the least. And to share it and offer your insight to others is so commendable of you. I want to thank you for all you do for the Alzheimer community and all your advocacy work to enlighten everyone. I wish you nothing but good health and happiness going forward.
Thank you, Ron. And this is a great opportunity. Again, this is, getting the word out, getting the world a little more known in this early onset category. Awareness is so important, and you've done so much for me tonight and helping me reach that level. So I much appreciate it. Thank you so much.
My pleasure doing that. I just want to tell the audience I did read the book Ice Cream in the Cupboard. It's got, it'll make you laugh and it'll make you cry. It's a great book. It's a great movie, and I highly recommend the book. And we will feature the book on the podcast notes, and we'll feature the book on our Instagram and our Facebook group, which has thousands of people in it. Comments and suggestions for the podcast, you can email me at itsarapwithrap@gmail.com. Our Facebook group and page is It's a Rap with Rap. Our website is itsarapwithrap.com. Our Instagram is It's a Rap with Rap podcast. All the episodes of the podcast are on YouTube. It's a Rap with Rap, the podcast uncut. I want to thank everyone for listening. Please stay safe. And for now, it's a wrap.